Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode number 8 of the City Stage and Friends podcast. I'm Victor Johansson, along with Josiah Shostrom and Francisco Corrales in the engineering room for a little bit. Today we have Jim Mckenzie, my friend, also my mixed martial arts instructor.
Yes.
We met in a very unique way. I know. I feel like the way we met was kind of made to happen. I mean, you knew Colin, I knew Colin, so we eventually would have met. But I randomly decided I want to try martial arts. I want to learn how to do some striking, and I want to do some self-defense stuff. So I reached out to Core Combat, and then you were my instructor. Turns out we started talking, and then you do the same thing, video production.
Yeah.
So you've been in video production for, what, 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
20 years. And then before that,
I was an art director. And in a variety of agencies, primarily in Chicagoland area. So that was 13 years doing that. Yeah.
Wow. That's a really long career in this. Yeah. What would you call that our whole industry? Video production, marketing, the creative industry. The creative industry. I think that's a good term.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a really long time. What have you, I guess there's been so much change in this industry for, even the last 10 years. Right. So coming from the agency world and then starting your own video production company, what kind of changes, or what changes, I guess, stick out to you the most throughout the last, 20, 25 years?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is the democratization, which I for whatever reason, I have a hard time. Thank you. I have a hard time with that word, even though I like that word. At least
define democratization.
Well, I think it's making things more accessible, easier to do for the masses, as opposed to having, as I was talking earlier before we were on about drones. 10 years ago, you started to see those things start to emerge. And I was just online looking at stuff, and you kind of go, that's interesting. And then when you started to see how it became affordable for everyone, then you're like, whoa. And then you just see this explosion of stuff. And I think that's I've seen a lot of those signs happening throughout the years, the last 3 decades. And like desktop publishing was an on too as well. Here's another one for you, typesetting. There's a thing called typesetters at one time.
Sure.
And
what is that?
Well, prior to desktop publishing, if you handed it, you'd have a book and you'd look through all the different fonts and stuff that you had in there and stuff. And
oh wow,
you would choose like a certain font, and you go, okay, I want to have Helvetica. Mm-hmm. I could have picked a more interesting font. I'm sorry, but
Arial. That's
there we go. And and you pick the point size and stuff, the leading, and you give the service bureau who will actually create the fonts and everything, and the actual stuff that you're going to cut out and paste and everything. You'd have to wait for it, and then you paste it on your board and everything. And so you receive all that stuff.
Wow.
So it wasn't like something that you could just, type up on a computer. So
let's see if we stretch that font a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's
wow.
When that happened too, it was kind of funny how people went gonzos for that when it first happened. When I first sat down and played around with like Adobe Illustrator, I was like the version 1, which was a nightmare to work with. And all of a sudden you see, hey, well, look, you could wrap the type around. And actually, part of that was called freehand. I don't know if you guys ever even heard of freehand.
Yeah,
all this freehand, and I liked that one better prior to Illustrator. Actually, I've always cursed Adobe for a variety of reasons. Same thing with Photoshop.
Very many reasons for it.
And same thing with Photoshop. You could not. There wasn't really layers. There wasn't. You had to do an undo. There wasn't iterations where you could do layers and stuff. There wasn't an infinite amount of undos. You can only do one undo. And so you would save different iterations of your project, because if you didn't, it's going to crash and you're going to lose it. Or you're like, oh,
That still happens, by the way.
Yeah, I know that. But I want to go back. I want to go back to when I did this as opposed to, what you can do today. It was really ridiculous, but you didn't have anything else to go on. It was still an incredible thing because it was all so new.
Yeah.
So I guess back to your point, probably one of the biggest things that I've seen has changed is it's allowed other people or independent people, for example. I wouldn't be here with you guys if it wasn't for the technology to allow me to work independently. And when I worked at agencies, you had, a team of people to work on projects, and that's how things did. And things moved a lot slower. Projects did not move as fast, and that could be a good or bad thing. The good thing is that. In
what sense?
Well, I think
like campaigns, or
I mean, just in general, just making an ad, creating an ad for a magazine would, I can turn and burn one in a half an hour, easily, or you can grab a portion of a template and then kind of customize it and create whatever you want.
Yeah. Change
the color, put different picture and stuff, out it goes, right?
Now, do you think there's benefit in that, or do you think two people or one person working on a new campaign? I mean, depending on the person, right? Yeah. But I mean, because there's a lot more detail when there's more people involved. There's a lot more voices. There's a lot more opinions, and I guess, do you see a benefit to not?
I think there's a little bit of I think that's a really good question. I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, I'll give you another example. Look at movies today. You have these multi-million-dollar, pieces that are, it's through they create a movie through a group of individuals, and people have to sign. I mean, Disney's doing all over the place, and they're failing miserably because they're checking all their boxes as opposed to making great art. And I think that's the problem of having too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Where I think it's an exciting time we live because technology is at our access. We have cameras. I mean, my God, I have a camera. If I would have known it when I was a kid, would have blown my mind. Or even 5 years ago, it would have blown my mind. And you can create motion pictures with a camera that costs $3,000. Yeah, you gotta do other things to it, but in essence, what you can do. And so what does that do? It relieves you from the shackles of having to deal with all these other people who, in a lot of ways, have you guys ever seen the movie called Office Space?
I don't think I have.
Oh, you gotta see it. It's a fantastic movie. If you've ever worked in a cubicle, you gotta see it.
I never have. I never wanted to.
It's an incredible movie because there's one scene where the actor they called in, they hired a group to kind of like basically fire people,
Okay.
And they're calling in everybody and they're interviewing one person at a time, and they go, "So what is it that you do here?" And this one guy goes, "Well, I have personal skills." He's like, "Well, so do you talk to the client?" He's like, "Well, no, I have people for that." He's like, "Well, what is it that you do?" So I think that's the problem with the bureaucracy of a larger production and stuff, is that you got people really are in a position that have no purpose to creatively, and they inject themselves. Whether it is they have the perfect example, when I have a client, and you could do something really creative, and they don't like the color because it reminds them of like baby food or something, and there's no real other than that. And so when you do that from that scale, I think that's where things start to fall apart when it comes to creativity.
Yeah.
And I think
too many people wanting to have a voice without any reason, really.
Well, I think they're a little bit overinflated with what they think they know.
Yeah.
And I try to be honest with myself. I don't know everything, and I certainly I'm willing to learn, and I think that's exciting to be around other creative people. But I think, I guess back to my point is, I think it's exciting today is that we can create some incredible content with a smaller group of individuals.
Yeah.
And you don't have those layers of nonsense that can water it down. So I think in a way things have gotten better for that reason. But then also you can't hide behind you can't just have one job to do something. I think in this world, you have to be very, very multifaceted.
Yeah.
But that also appeals to my interests. I like learning lots of new things and doing other things.
Yeah, that's kind of been a theme on the podcast. We've been the last two guests we've had. We end up talking about how you have to know more than, one job or one aspect of your job. You have to be a really pretty well-rounded person.
You can't survive as just a typesetter.
No.
Yeah.
Those people are gone.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, that you mentioned it's also potentially a negative, just how accessible it is in a way. So you touch on that at all? Like how
Well, I think where the negativity is because it's access to the masses. Oh, there's another perfect example, I think, in drones. We'll go back to drones, for example. You don't really have to earn the skill like you used to. If you look at RC models, when you had to physically build them,
sure,
and it wasn't GPS run, and you crash them, and you spent months building this RC plane or whatever it is, a helicopter.
Yeah.
And so it was a very niche thing to do, and it removed all the idiots basically to do it. But all of a sudden, you have this technology that's quite incredible. It makes it opens it up to the masses, but there's a lot of people or the masses.
That's a good illustration.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. With how it used to be just such a big thing to fly these. Yeah. I had a buddy in Australia who was into RC helicopters, and he had is nitros like helicopters a thing?
I'm not aware. I never.
But it was some sort of fuel they ran.
Oh yeah,
and it was like he just dumped so much money into this craft of RC helicopters, and it was not by any means something where you could just open the box, read a 1-page thing and put the thing in the air. It was like you basically had to be a pilot to be able to stabilize these things and understand how it works.
Yeah, and I think what it does though is in people who don't have real creative skills, they get nervous because they've gotten good at being, I guess, a difference between a draftsman versus an architect, right? You have someone who's technically can run a drone, but creatively don't really know how that fits into creating a story, how to create a narrative that evokes people emotionally, that makes it a powerful statement.
Or they're just doing it because they can and not because
and it's fun.
There's a reason for it. Yeah.
And I think that's also the same thing with design. The same thing with video and filmmaking is that you have a lot of people who are enamored with the bright, shiny things, objects. The same thing with all the gear. And I like it too, but it is not the means of an end, right? It's a tool to help tell your narrative, tell your story. And I think having a level of discipline from my background of having traditional methods, spending hours and hours in dark rooms and things of that nature, I have a great appreciation for Photoshop. I have a great I have a great appreciation, for desktop publishing. I have a great appreciation for. I used to have a Super 8mm camera, and I used to backwind it to do double exposures and things like that. And then you get a light leak, and then all of a sudden it's gone. I remember actually doing videos or movies when I was a kid, and I thought, oh, this is going to be incredible. I spent months doing it, sent it out to get developed. It's completely black. Because I underexposed it, but I didn't know, and that's how you learn.
Really?
Yeah, and then it's gone,
Wow.
And so it's things like that I have a real unbelievable appreciation for what we do today.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered the question.
No, yeah.
No, it's just an interesting contrast there.
Yeah.
I guess there's a positive and a negative to everything. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think you're going to have lower level content, and the world needs it. It's fine. The same thing as everything else. And then you're going to have, the premium stuff. Yeah. When you have people who are very creative, very knowledgeable.
A lot more thought, intention goes into it.
A lot more intention.
Instead of just, that looks kind of cool. Put it out there.
Yeah. What do you think drew you to the visual arts as a kid? Starting out with 8mm. What was
Star Wars has to be it. I mean, that's if I had to pick one thing, because I was just so blown away by how awesome it was, and I didn't know. I always liked science fiction. When I was a kid, I would watch the old Star Treks and stuff. But when that happened, I was like, whoa, someone can create that and make it look believable. That's insane. And then that intrigued me a lot. Just the idea that someone dreamt up these ideas and then they actually executed it and made a world that didn't exist. And that was really, really something for me. So I've always had a real fascination for science fiction.
Yeah.
Anyway, because it's what you dream up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, Lord of the Rings was definitely, that was my Star Wars. I saw Star Wars after, but, you know, Lord of the Rings was kind of like the more modern version of, but just that, the wonder of it and all the behind the scenes of creating, you know, the whole series. That's what drew me. So
was it behind the scenes like something you were able to get your hands on at the time of Star Wars?
I think it wasn't it?
Magazines, like what was it that kind of got you into that? Because it was a whole different thing than shooting Star Wars today is.
I was totally 100%, and you could ask my parents that. It was just like my whole basement was just dedicated to making stuff like that. And
no, really?
Oh, yeah. My dad would be looking for a tool. He's like, Jim, where's my tammer? You know, and stuff. And I'm like, but that, and in those days, there wasn't the internet, right? So I would get a magazine subscription, and you know, they would say, hey, behind the scenes are coming up, you know, next month's edition. I'm like,
oh, really?
Yeah. Stuff like
cool.
that. So, and then occasionally you would have some TV special on about visual effects occasionally, you know, that because it became, people were interested. I had this one, what the hell was that called? There was a publication specifically for amateur filmmakers who do visual effects. And it was
like Video Maker?
No, this is way before that.
Way before that.
Yeah, I used to have that one too, but it was way before that. It was I can't even remember what it's called now. It'll come to me afterwards. But it was awesome.
So they would just highlight all films, or
no? It was all independent stuff that people made.
Okay.
And then so it was a publication of like people, you know, younger guys making movies with their Super 8 camera. And building sets and blowing stuff up.
Yeah. There's something so attractive about these stories of George Lucas and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name. Lord of the Rings director.
I was going to say Tolkien, not Tolkien. Peter
Jackson.
Peter Jackson. Yeah. Wow, it's been a long time. But there's something so attractive about them just having this vision and the freedom to experiment and just think outside the box. And these photos of, you know, with their 8mm cameras in their backyard filming all these movies. I remember just thinking like, oh man, I want that to be me. And I had no idea, you know, why. And we were talking about it earlier, but I wonder if it's just this desire to be completely free. Because I think as creative people, you don't want to be put in a box. You don't want to be constrained by rules, you know, so I wonder if that's just like an avenue for us to be able to kind of express our feelings in a way, but express them on a physical level. Did you feel like that was a part of the reason why you were so attracted to this? Like let your imagination run wild and you could do anything you want to, or was it just mainly like wanting to, like you saw an effect and then you wanted to recreate it? Because it was kind of both for me. So I'm just curious on what what pushed you forward into it.
Oh man, that's a good question too. I think one of the biggest things that I loved about that was almost like it's like a magic trick, you know, in a way that you're creating something that doesn't really actually exist and try to make it as plausible as possible. Like I was like enamored with how they used to paint on glass paintings and matte paintings and stuff. And so I would paint on glass and I would put it, and I would, you know,
like the Disney style.
Yeah. Things like that. And I would do it. They did a lot of that for Star Wars, original 3. And so I was really enamored with things like that. And how can I paint that good to make it look like it's an actual environment, and then shoot footage and then put it into that shot? Whether I shoot through the glass or I backwind it and then double expose it and put the live action in there and like set extensions and things like that.
Yeah.
To me, I was like, that is so cool. And then also, I think I was telling you guys, kit bashing, where you come up with let's say a spaceship, for example, and you want to create this spaceship, but it doesn't exist as a model. There's no such thing. You buy a bunch of model kit parts, like different model kits.
You're talking like 2-part epoxy store models you get at the hobby store.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
You just get like, you know, whether it's a car or tanks. Tanks, I did a lot of reading about Star Wars. They loved using tank parts. They loved using battleship parts and stuff. And then you piece it together. You build the the basic structure, and then you piece it together and you glue on these little parts to give it more detail and stuff. Airbrush it, weather it. To me, I thought that was just so cool, and you fool everyone to thinking this is something, and then how do you make it look like
a magic trick?
Kit bashing. I haven't heard that one before. That's cool.
It's really cool, and I love doing that also with sets too. As if you follow, like, another one of my favorite movies, it's some of these lower budget ones, even though it was very successful, was the sequel to Aliens that James Cameron did.
Oh, okay, yeah.
One of my favorite movies. A lot of times when they build sets and stuff, and this is what Roger Corman, you've probably heard of Roger Corman, right? They would do the same thing for sets, is they take throwaway items and then we'll glue them on the walls and stuff, whether it's like just a package for McDonald's or whatever. And they glue it, and then they paint it and stuff and weather it and put different labels and stuff. And
such an art to that.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I used to do that all the time too. My dad was kind enough to give me a bunch of wood that he wasn't using, and I would hang up a set from the ceiling in the basement.
A magic trick that's probably the best way I've heard that described.
It's like sleight of hand. It totally is,
It's my little smoke and mirrors, baby.
I mean, isn't it what we do in a lot of ways? I mean, when you tell a story, what's going on behind the lights and the camera? It doesn't matter. It's a mess. It's a train wreck, right? A lot of times. Or for example, when you do an actual commercial shoot and you create a set and stuff, it's all nonsense, So that's what makes it fun.
That's a really good explanation of it, because I would do a lot of fight choreography, and the part that to show my parents or show my friends and like, look, we beat the crap out of each other, but all it is just reactions and just the right angle and sound effects with a little cut in there.
I personally like to do the real thing though.
I know you do. I know you do.
Just hit the guy, okay?
What is this pulling punches nonsense?
I wanted to fast forward to your years in marketing, because I think probably starting your own, I'm not sure, but I feel like starting your own business was less accessible as a creative back then compared to now. Would that be true?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you decided to go the agency route, and did you start out as a art director?
No, I was just designer.
Okay, graphic design. That's right.
Yeah.
So as you moved into art directing, can you just give me explanation of kind of what that role is? I know it probably varies to some extent.
I mean, it's basically you're overseeing the creative. When you're overseeing the graphically, the creative, whether it's the design work and any other designers that are on your staff, illustrators.
Now, is this just print or is this video?
This was print, particularly at this time in the 90s.
Okay.
Even though I was starting to slowly break into doing video stuff later in the 90s, and then I started directing some pieces. Like directed one for Allied Van Lines, and I did the storyboarding and directed the piece and stuff. So, but
cool.
Yeah. So, I think the thing that as an art director is that you're just kind of ahead of the graphics and just overseeing things. Now you could argue that's similar to what a creative director is, kind of oversees the entire thing. And I even though I still did oversee the copy from the copywriters, but I didn't really at that time. I really didn't give as much input on it. I was still green in my 20s, and I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to do the visuals. I'm not going to worry about that as much.
Yeah.
And as an adult, I was adult then, but as an older man now, it's like, you have to understand the entire facet of the whole process, and so especially when I got into my own business.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know what I was getting myself into, to be honest. So
I mean, you said it in a very interesting way before, and it was it's something to the fact that you were glad that you were naive enough.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm glad that I didn't know what I was walking into.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have done it. It was hard. It was hard. It was easy to get started because I had 13 years of agency experience. People knew me, liked my work. I guess they liked me. I think that's also a big part of it. People have to like you.
Yeah.
It's
selling you.
Yeah, you're selling. You are the brand, right?
Yeah.
And so because I worked with these agencies, they would call me, and I didn't have to solicit work so much.
Oh, that's a huge leg up.
It was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. So I was working away, and to this day, it still kind of is that way. But it's also to my detriment too, because you get comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with just the phones ringing,
Yeah.
emails are coming in, and you just kind of go, oh, cool, got work. Instead of going, I want to go after that. I want to do that. And I do that, but I think it's easy to just kind of be complacent in that way. It's the same thing with health. It's the same thing with anything in your life. You know, if you don't push yourself and you don't have somebody else, you don't have a boss who's telling you, hey, you got to start at 8:00 or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I'll sleep in a little bit. I won't do this. You know, and then all of a sudden you're like, what happened with my day?
Yeah, and especially when you first start, like you're very motivated, right? Because
yeah.
you don't have you have to do it. But
Yeah.
then there's I feel like there's a point where you can become like you have enough work. There's a middle ground of, I don't know how you would phrase it, middle ground of I'm trying to think of the word, but where you're comfortable enough, but you don't have to push yourself.
It's comfort level for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's where a lot of people are.
Well, I think it's not even human nature. It's nature of nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's like was the body at rest tends to stay at rest. The body in motion tends to stay in motion.
Now, what do you think was the hardest part about starting, breaking away from the agency world and then going into your own business?
Well, I was very idealistic, so it wasn't so hard in that way because I was very excited about the freedom. So it and my wife at the time was very supportive of it too. So my father has owned his own business. Both my grandparents, both my grandfathers own their own business.
Oh wow!
So I grew up
that's great.
in an entrepreneurial, environment that wanted to, cheer you on.
Yeah,
with it.
I think I was the first in my family.
Really?
Well, my mom's dad had his own business, but yeah, it was difficult to even convince, like, tell my grandpa about it or tell my mom and dad, like, I think I'm gonna work for myself. I'm gonna get my own work.
Yeah.
So, but at least having that example would be a huge leg up.
Yeah, it was. But you also feel like there's also a responsibility to be able to be on that level too, because my father, he was a hardworking guy, super smart. He still is, and but I didn't even know how hard he really worked until I got on my own, because he doesn't complain. He just does it. He's one of those guys that he does it. He's a very he's a tough guy. He's a very I'm very fortunate to have a father like my father. Both my parents actually.
Yeah,
they're just incredible people. So,
but there's still a lot of struggle.
Yeah.
Despite, having some of these advantages, but you still have to plan out a future of your own. You still have to figure out what it is you want to do with your company. So what were some of those challenges, not necessarily starting out, but, going through for the first, 5 years? Because those are the toughest ones to keep alive.
I think the hardest thing I had was, that's a really good question. Give me a second here. I think look back a little bit on time. It's now coming up on 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the hardest thing, and I think is probably the hardest thing, and probably the best advice I could give anybody who wants to start their own business, who's young and creative. It's not your creativity. If you are a really creative person, you're always going to want to be compelled to be better, right? You're not going to be satisfied. I don't know anybody who's really good creatively who says, I'm done. I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not a problem.
There's this quote that art is always abandoned. It's never finished.
It's never. Yep. I know that quote's an amazing quote, and it's totally true. But, and I say this, it's so important, you got to do the things that you don't want to do. And that means it's the business aspect. It's understanding the acumen of selling, of managing money. And I'm like, oh, that'll take care of itself, or you just kind of like go, oh, I don't want to look at that right now. I have this to do. And that is the biggest mistake that I made. And I would tell anyone, that's the part that you better invest serious time and understanding. Do the stuff that you don't want to do. It's easy to be, it's fun to be an artist. It's fun. It's not always fun, I shouldn't say, because you have deadlines and you have clients that don't always agree with you.
Yeah.
But you got to invest in understanding how to manage your money, how to manage your business. It's a business. Don't confuse it with fine arts. You get these flaky people who think it's a fine art. It's not. It's a business, and you better treat it that way. Otherwise, it's going to run on you, and you're going to be sad, and you're going to be broke, and that's it. I think that's the one thing I would tell my younger self for sure, because I was idealistic about it.
You're not going to go out there. You're not going to be able to create your art and have patrons that just, let you create.
With the goodness of their heart.
At what point do you think you discovered that you needed that change?
I think the pandemic really slapped me in the face with that.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of been there. I think another part of if I'm going to get a little bit personal, there's two things that happened in my life that really changed me in a profound way. In the end, it's made me a stronger person. I got divorced. That changes you in a very profound way.
Yeah.
Financially and emotionally, and it makes you question everything about your life. Then I also have a son who has special needs, and that changes you on a whole nother level too.
Yeah.
And you learn, and being a parent changes you too, obviously. When you're a single guy, you don't have a family and stuff, you should take all the risks that you can do. That's fine. You don't have to worry about people. You don't have to worry about supporting. You just have to support yourself. If you want to eat ramen noodles tomorrow, it's fine. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
But when you have a family, you have another person also too who's also bringing money in as another profession. You can kind of be a little bit easier on. Well, you can slack sometimes, or you can be not as on your business.
Yeah.
When you go off by yourself and you still have children to finance and this and that and everything, you better bring your A game, because if you don't, then you're going to run into problems. Don't look for a quick fix. Don't look for the next piece of gear. That's another thing. Don't buy so much stuff.
Yeah.
The gear acquisition syndrome. We've discussed this.
Yeah.
Gas.
Get so good. Get impeccably good at telling incredible stories. If you are creating narratives, I think the thing that I pride myself that I really enjoy and I think I do really well is telling 4-minute narratives. And those to me mean more now than ever, and telling stories of real impact that resonate with people on a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
And I can always get better at my cinematography, lighting.
Yeah.
But I can hire other people too. And I don't care what camera it is. If that story's good, awesome. If the camera happens to be good and the lighting's great and everything else, even better. But if the story sucks,
good
it doesn't
enough
matter.
that it doesn't distract from the story, right?
Doesn't, yeah. So I don't know. I think that if you put an order of importance in how you want to construct your business, you have to do the stuff, and you have to be brutally honest with yourself about do you want to be successful or not? And I don't care if it's you want to be more in visual effects, or if you want to be more in narratives, or if you want to be more in doing corporate, talking heads.
Yeah.
You just got to have a clear vision and the fact of doing things that are uncomfortable to do first.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
anyways.
That's a big aspect. I know as we talked, I think that's a big aspect of you is doing those uncomfortable things. And it's the reason you train in martial arts as well. And I know we've had discussions after class. Too many people are too comfortable and they don't push themselves.
Yeah.
So what was kind of the reason to start martial arts? Because you've been doing it for a while.
Yeah.
You're about to get your black belt
in jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
In jiu-jitsu this year.
Hopefully, I better get after it.
Yeah. So
Tommy, I better get after it.
What started that side of who you are?
Well, I started when I started doing martial arts when I was 16. Probably the same way I got into art.
Mm.
It was just amazing to me when I first saw it. Kind of like watched a Bruce Lee movie or something. Like, oh my God, I want to do that. Then Karate Kid came out. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I had a friend who was doing karate, and I'm like, signed up. We're still friends to this day. But I think that was the idea of, as I got older, just like art. As I got older, my focus became different. It's still an art form because people say, well, how could you manage to do martial arts for the last 40 years? Well, I'm not doing the same martial art the last 40 years. I would have quit a long time ago. Your perception changes, just like your art as an artist changes too. Your perception of why you got into it. I'm sure your guys' perception has changed in your profession as well.
Yeah.
So I think with martial arts, it became something that enamored me to the point where I'm like, I want to learn it to a point where this is hard. And then I got into more fighting, competition, and then I didn't like the feeling of being helpless, and that was really introduced to me in jiu-jitsu when I went. I already had a couple of black belts already when I went to jiu-jitsu.
So you mentioned jiu-jitsu. So what are there other disciplines?
Oh yeah, I've done karate, I've done judo, I've done stick fighting, which is a Filipino martial art. Kali.
Did you do taekwondo?
I did. I had a lot of friends who had taekwondo.
Okay.
I've done Wing Chun, Kung Fu. What else? Yeah, it's just a variety of different. Done some wrestling, boxing.
Yeah.
Muay Thai.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think the thing that I was always looking for, and I met a lot of amazing friends along the way, was something that worked. And I wasn't really so much cared about what it looked like. I wanted to learn if it actually was physically, able to take someone apart if I had to defend myself.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing is foolproof. There's no such thing as either death and taxes. There's only two things that are certain, right? So, but then when I was introduced to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because the UFC happened in '93, I remember watching. I'm like, what the heck? What's going on there? And I had heard about the Gracie family and stuff, and just weren't in the Midwest at that time. And then there was somebody in Chicago who came, and I remember going to the first class. And like I said, I already had black belts and stuff, and these people were like white belts for 6 months, and they just cleaned me out.
Really?
But it was all grappling. It was no striking.
Yeah.
But I don't like to use that as an excuse, because the truth of the matter is you don't really know how it's going to play out in a fight. And I'm like, I didn't like that feeling. And I'm like, a lot of people, they choose to just, like, their ego's bruised. They don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, I want to learn that. I don't want that feeling. I want to learn that skill. And I think what I love about martial arts is particularly ones that I feel are realistic in a sense of self-defense. It's been proven time and time again that it has an effectiveness. It puts you in a very uncomfortable position, as you probably already experienced.
Oh, yeah.
You lift weights. You're physically fit. You're in great shape. How does it feel when someone gets on top of you and you can't get them off you?
Well,
they have like 20 pounds less muscle than you have.
The thing is,
it's really it's very humbling.
Even so, I started out thinking like I want to do things that work, and I watch MMA clips on Facebook, and like everybody else does. I don't watch full fights, but it's just always been interesting. And I thought, if I were to actually be in an altercation, I wonder what that would be like, because it's been a long time. And when I got into class, we did striking for a little bit, and just the very basics. And then for the first time, I had an actual sort of a spar match. I mean, we go very light, but we went to the ground and started rolling, and it was incredible how even a guy with 20 pounds less than me, the weight and that pressure of someone on you trying to pin you down, it puts you in a bit of a panic.
Yeah.
So to me, it was just like, just even realizing how to, how a person's body, how to interact with it. That was such an enlightenment that it changed my perspective on everything, really. So it's I think it's the reason I want to continue doing it too, is just like it broadens your perspective. It might be like a minute perspective on, what a 150-pound guy on, pressure on you.
Who knows what they're doing?
Right. Exactly. Right. But I think it also like opens up more perspectives in your brain, allows you to think broader. Yes. It is for me anyway. Yes. I don't know if you find that.
No, I feel that's really, as a coach, I feel it's profoundly changed my martial arts experience, particularly the ones that were real, that are not so much cosmetic and they look fun and flashy and work in movies, but real martial arts. It challenges you in a very uncomfortable way then you start to question yourself, like, what else am I not sufficient in?
I almost like equate it to a third eye. You know, I know it's a silly comparison, but it's like it just one small thing, and I'm repeating myself, but I don't know how better to explain it. One small aspect that kind of changes your understanding of something will open up other avenues, and I don't know what that's all about. I mean,
I think what it is I like this saying, it's being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what does that mean? Well, doing something you're actually doing it as a hobby. You're not forced to do it. It's not your job.
Yeah.
You're not getting fired. You are taking your free time to do something that's uncomfortable, physically uncomfortable, point where, dare I say, painful a lot of times, and subscribing to do it. And I think what that does for me, and it does for other people, and I know I'm not the only one, this is why this thing is kind of sweeping the world, is it makes you question what other things I can do uncomfortable. I'm okay. Not only okay, I'm growing from it.
Yeah.
It's making, there's another saying, iron sharpens iron. You're working from people who can kick your butt, and you're going to become stronger, not just physically, but spiritually, intellectually, emotionally. All those things are connected. As I get older, I see that. It's almost like, to your point, your third eye, or you see the Matrix, whatever metaphor you want to use, is you start to see the similarities and how everything interrelates and overlaps with each other, whether it's your business, it's your personal relationships. And so I see fighting. I even see people, I see their personality, and I usually know how they're going to fight just by having a conversation with them. Their personality will tell me how they're going to fight.
How was mine?
You're
spastic.
You're on point with your personality. Just the way it was
spastic personality.
Spastic,
so spastic fighting.
Exactly.
no. But you see that and you start to understand that, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I can understand people better. I can communicate with people better. I don't have to. Also, too, I think a horrible thing to be, and this is where our culture I have a real stress with, is people are they're not doing these uncomfortable things to better themselves. And what does that mean? Well, I mean, here's a perfect example. If you make all your decisions based on fear, it's not a good way to live. You're not making good decisions. If you make decisions based on what's right, they might not be popular. They might not even, you might have a lot of people who are hating on you, but it's right. Now you're doing you're doing right by the world and doing right by yourself. And so how do you get there? Well, you got to make yourself strong. And what does that mean? Well, you can put that into a lot of different contexts. And so martial arts is one avenue to do that, where it helps you. It's like brushing your teeth and stuff. You got to do these things. You have to maintenance it, lifting weights, to make yourself a better version of yourself. And that way you can apply that into your life, to your children's lives, to people that you care about, or even in influencing other people in a positive way. So I think that's all interrelated for sure.
Oh, 100%, 100%. For me, I wish I would have discovered that sooner. You know, I think now it's kind of more accepted, and if you have the right algorithms for Instagram, I mean, my whole feed is that, you know, inspirational stuff, discipline, you know, doing hard things, not giving up, not quitting, you know. But I think a lot of people don't have that algorithm.
No.
You know, and they don't see that. So it's trying to kind of, you know, figure out ways to inspire them to get out of that comfort zone in different ways than, you know, from Instagram or, you know, Facebook, whatever it is.
I think what it is that we live in a very materialistic world, right? And a lot of people, not to say that you can't buy something and it makes you happy, but it really is kind of a fleeting thing. And happiness in general is fleeting.
Yes.
You know, I think if you're just chasing happiness, I think it's the wrong thing to do. You chase your life with purpose, and you create things that are inherently who you are, not just because you were born good looking or whatever. But I'm impressed with people because I could see it in their face, and I see the value is that they invest in themselves, and they have to do the work, whatever that means. The discipline of owning a business, the discipline of not eating everything that you want to eat just because it tastes good. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. I really like being in a group of people who like doing hard things.
He could eat chocolate all day, every day.
My metabolism hasn't caught up with me
well,
yet.
The hell with you.
I'm sorry. Yeah. No, I mean, I had that revelation myself because it's like as a kid, I could eat whatever. And then all of a sudden, I gained 40 pounds.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't just eat anything and everything and not do anything and not work out or be physical.
Think, too, it's like you look at all the people who are really angry in the world right now. They're not disciplined usually. They're not putting in the work, and then they hate and they try to project on everyone else because they're not making their life the way it is. The thing that I learned when I started going through really hard times, I started really realizing that there's not much I really can control, but I can control how I react. I can get up and I can do the best version of myself. I can work out. I can do those things and deny myself of eating stuff. And it starts to kind of build and create a more positive sense. I feel better. My day's not always going to be great. Days are going to suck, but I'm also far more durable to be able to manage those things as opposed to just giving up and say, oh, you know what? I love these people. Back in the day, I used to do this. Well, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
What are you doing now? Oh, because you're what? You're in your 50s? So am I. Yeah. That's so you're just checking out? We're just waiting to die?
Getting away from the victim mentality.
Yeah. It's just, it's so...
I like what you said. You have the ability to control how you react.
That's all you got.
Yeah, stuff happens to you that
and
is
stuff
not
will.
great.
And stuff
and
will.
Will continue to, but you can control how you react to what's happening to you. That's a big deal.
How do you think, so, not to get too personal, and I'm sorry if I am,
that's
but
all right.
If you didn't have martial arts and if you didn't have this foundation that you've kind of built on, how do you think, or how much more difficult do you think it would have been to, have the experiences you've had recently, a divorce, and then a son with special needs? Like, those are really challenging things to go through. And to have that baseline of the discipline is huge, and to kind of curb the emotional reaction to everything,
Yeah. I don't know. It was hard in general. I'm a right-brained person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an emotional guy. So
a lot of artists are.
Yeah. Exactly. So we're very, we're driven that way. And so I'm fortunate enough to have really good people in my life too. One person in particular, I'll tell you the story really quickly. Through my darkest days, my friend Tommy, I don't even know how much I owe to him. He heard everything and was so supportive, and he told me the things that I didn't want to hear, but I needed to hear. And so I think through martial arts, through doing those things, he's my martial arts, he's my jiu-jitsu coach, who's also one of my best friends. He walks the line. He does his best, and I help him in return, but he's a guy who would not let me slack on those things, even though I was having a rough time. Where some people would be like, "Oh, it's okay, go do." He's like, "What are you doing? What are you gonna do about it? Okay, here's what's laid out to you. You're gonna keep going down that path. How's that working out for you? But so a lot of these people that I think, to answer your question, I have met some insanely incredible people through martial arts. Some of my best friends who think the same way as I do. You're with people who want more in their life. They want to become more. They want to do things that people look at and go, "You're nuts." And they want that person. I really am attracted to those kind of people because they support you in a way that a lot of people who are pedestrians in life, they just kind of walk through it. They don't have that skill. They don't have that strength.
Yeah.
They don't. It's funny. Some of my best friends, we went to the emergency room together.
This is what he tells us every time we spar. Guys, we've brought people to the emergency room.
Like,
be careful.
It's like and it's nothing personal, but it's happened. And I wouldn't trade that either, because what I learned. Because people say, "Well, that's stupid. Why would you do that?" Like, you don't understand then, because you're not looking at. And I'll never compare this to I'm like not the world's toughest guy, but not even by a long stretch. But like somebody who's in the military, they say that their brotherhood that they have, you can't be replaced. Now, this is nothing like a war, sure. But I understand a very sliver of it. A very, very tiny piece of it.
And I think we experience that also on productions.
Yes.
It's not to the same level, not nearly, but we've talked about this before. It's you are all working towards the same goal. You all have to work closely together, and sometimes for extended periods of time, 3 days, 4 days, a week, whatever it is.
There's definitely the analogies of being in the trenches.
Yes.
On a 10, 12-hour day or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, and you build bonds so much quicker. And when you're, it's almost like there's this theory of syncing people together. I can't remember quite what it is, but do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like a hive. It's like a hive mind. When you get a hive mind, you're all able to work together much better and be more efficient.
Well-oiled machine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, so to me, I know that the motivational and the discipline part of you is so huge to me. I started out in MMA because I thought several reasons, but one of the things is I just want to see if I do become more confident of a person, and by just trying different things. And it doesn't have to be MMA, but whatever your new thing that you want to do, that you want to kind of conquer. It's so important to
that takes you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly, I did feel like I was in a period of my life where I was a little bit comfortable, and then I started MMA, and with your coaching and just being disciplined and sparring afterwards. We have a 45-minute lesson, and then we spar for probably an hour. We roll around for an hour and a half sometimes. And the uncomfortable thing, those uncomfortable situations, and it's so weird how it's made me a little bit different. I've seen a change in the last 6 months.
That's awesome.
And I wasn't sure if I was going to. A part of me kind of doubted it. But it has changed. Like I look at myself 6 months ago and I'm like, I do feel like I'm a little bit more confident. And it's not the fact that I think I could beat anybody up on the street. It is definitely not the case. I still have a long way to go. But
it's a journey. It's not, there's no end result. It's just, you just keep going. And I think, in the end too, to your point, I don't want to fight anybody. I've gotten in an altercation. It was a long time ago, but, my feeling about it is then what else is there for it? It's building you. It's building a better version of you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I try to instill in everyone. Yes, if the rubber hits the road, I want to give you some kind of skill set that is better than nothing. Is it foolproof? No. You never know what you're walking into, but your awareness, becoming confident, learning how to do uncomfortable things, difficult tasks, these are all wonderful things. These are all wonderful things. Dealing with adversity, dealing with pain, physical pain, emotional pain, psychological, because there's a lot of psychology. I would drive sometimes to train, and I'd see somebody's car in the lot that I know who they are. I'm like, oh, crap, that guy's here tonight. And I know I'm in for a battle.
Yeah.
And you're like, I just want to turn around. I don't want to fight. I don't want to. That guy, he wants to strangle the life out of me tonight. And because he didn't get my number last time, he wants to get me this time. And you just kind of go,
yeah. No.
Okay, let's go. Let's do this. This is good for you. Win or lose, let's go.
And it's amazing how much of it is psychological too. Because sometimes I'll show up to class and I'll feel sharp. Like our last week, one day I was just like, I haven't been in for class for a week or so, and I felt just really on point. But sometimes I'll show up and it just not quite there, not quite as quick mentally. But it really affects, like physically I'm pretty much the same. But it affects the outcome.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, imagine in business, if you're not pushing yourself and you're just that click off, how many jobs are you losing?
Yeah.
How many interactions are kind of going by the wayside, and how much better of a person can you be? So anyway, it's been, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's just amazing how much it's pushed me as a person.
That's amazing. Well, I'm excited to do. You got a lot more, and you're going to find this is going to be so much more. Maybe we can get Josiah to.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Let's go.
Yeah. I mean,
It feels like a high pressure sales situation right now.
I'm only getting like 15%. So
Okay, just a small commission.
yeah,
yeah.
That.
I'll little under the table.
yeah,
later
under
on.
the table, of course.
No, I think honestly too, it's like even something as simple as this. This may sound, what's the right word? I might choose this carefully. It's not ego driven. It's like I say, making decisions based on fear as opposed to being in control or just dealing with people.
Yeah.
And I've run across people on several occasions in my 30 plus years of business that want to intimidate you. Okay.
Sure.
They come in and they squeeze your hand really hard. They do all this stuff.
Interesting.
They try to control.
Is this 90s tactics or?
Oh yeah, for sure it was. Yeah.
Oh, it's still around today.
Still around.
It's part of their.
And but you know what's so funny? It gives me where I just kind of look and I smile at them. Like if this went south right now, you're not going to be the biggest guy in the room. I promise you that. If you don't do what I do, you no.
Yeah.
So I look at that person. Oh, it's nice to meet you, and I'll smile. I don't try to get tough with them. I don't try to mean mug them. It just gives me that comfort and that confidence. Go, yeah, no, I don't care how much money you have. I don't care what you think you're doing, and you're squeezing my whatever it is. You know,
Yeah.
Are you going to yell at me? I've had people yell at me on the phone, you know, and swearing enough. This one guy, one client of the company agency, oh, you want to effing pay? Who's doing that? I'm like, and I was doing them I could tell you stories that blow your mind. And I looked at him like, you know, I don't like your tone. I don't care who you are. I don't care, you know. Oh, because you're the client, you have the right to talk to me that way. No, I'm not going to do that.
Wow.
You know?
I've been very fortunate. I've never encountered.
Yeah, I had more a few encounters with people like that, and you have to. But that's part of also not making decisions out of fear, making decisions that are right. You can't allow people to do that to you, because in the end, then what are you doing? You're losing a piece of yourself, and you're allowing people to dictate your life and how you do, especially if you're working for yourself. It's just it's a rotten thing to live that way. So.
What do you think it is that affects? What is the confidence that you gained from mixed martial arts in your background? How do you what is it that I'm trying to figure out how to say it? But
I think it's been more humility than anything else, too, in a lot of ways.
But it does affect the confidence too in other situations where it has nothing to do with the fact that you could overpower someone. You know what I mean? But it makes you a better, more confident person. And I've been trying to figure out what that is. And I don't know.
I think it's
why that's the result.
It's just doing difficult tasks and then being able to apply that same kind of thought into what you do for a living. Being conscious of that. I think that you could do that with a lot of things. You could be your job. You could be your, play basketball or something, right? And you want to get better at it. I don't know. I think individual sports, though, have a tendency, because you're out and competing, is a whole other thing. Actually, I would say competition, going actually out and compete in a match, is even more important, because it puts you in a really uncomfortable position, because now you're in the public eye, and you could look at me. That's all right. You can make a fool of yourself, and then only to realize later that you're on some YouTube channel. Someone clean your clock. It's putting yourself out in that weird situation like that. I think that's really good, though. Once again, it's a horrible feeling when you're in preparation for it. You go, especially step in a boxing ring, and someone's trying to knock you out.
Yeah,
and you go, oh, I'm really gonna do this.
Maybe it's just the high pressure, high stress situations is a big part of it too.
Yeah. But it's the euphoric feeling too. If you win, it's off the charts.
Yeah,
it's off the charts.
Oh
and
I'm sure.
Oh my God, you just go, holy crap! I just did something. I think it's also doing something that's not most people do, is something appealing to me too. And maybe that's why I like our profession. You ask, why did I do this? Like, I'm not trying to deliberately be different. I like certain things that are not what most people like.
Yeah.
I don't know. A
lot of people ask me what I do, just people I meet outside the industry, and they're so fascinated. To me, I've never really been fascinated about it, because it's just been my career.
Yeah, it's your thing.
Like, I don't know.
I don't know. It's like, I think.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah. Good to have you back. You good?
Back from the dead.
It was quiet.
Well, we were talking about manhandling people, and he had a cough. And
Yeah, it was time for me to leave.
No.
But before we wrap up, I want to touch base on kind of the stage in your career that you're at now, and that's video production.
Right.
So you've been doing it for 20 years.
Right.
And there's a lot I could touch on. So I just want to just kind of get an idea for some of the work that you do. So I know we do a lot of different types of video production, right? There's, if you have a camera, you can shoot anything.
Yeah.
But what is it that you specialize in, your company specialize in?
I think the thing that I really specialize is doing 3 to 4 minute narratives. Excuse me.
I was going to ask about that. That seems like an interesting time.
Yeah, me too.
The 4-minute narrative you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it usually seems to be around that.
Yeah.
Now, is this for nonprofits?
It's for nonprofits, but I also do it for a lot of companies as well.
Okay.
Yeah. It really, I don't know. It just really resonated with me and doing it. I love meeting unique, original people and then interviewing them, getting to know them a little bit, traveling, telling those little stories that resonate on a personal level. And they don't have to be anybody, high profile. It's quite the opposite. I like people who are what otherwise you would dismiss and find it's interesting to see how everybody's story is different but yet relatable in the world. And I love connecting with people on a personal level with those things, and it creates a lot of satisfaction for me.
Yeah, 4 minutes just seems to be that point, that
I don't
sweet
know.
spot. For
your 4 or
there.
5 minutes, something like that.
Cool.
I think people's attention span obviously is not very long.
Dictates it for sure.
It's like a sweet spot for
No,
that.
do you do different cuts with that? So do you give them a long form and then short forms with it?
It depends.
Okay,
Absolutely. I would love to do a longer format ones. It just hasn't manifested now. It's probably partially the fact of me being in that comfort zone of having this. Okay, I'm good at this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're in your thing, and then you're like, well, I could be doing this. I'm like, oh no, I'm going to be right here. And so that's the one thing that I think I really have a skill set doing, is capturing stories like
documentary type.
Yeah, I call them micro documentaries.
Yeah,
not even mini. They're micro.
Docs.
Micro.
I like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
My focus. Yeah, I worked with
MCs.
even in those types of projects, I'm so focused on visuals, and like wanting to light it perfectly. But I just worked with Matt Love. You don't know him. We talked about it before, but Matt's
Good
a
dude.
great guy. Yeah, and so we've worked on a couple of projects recently, and it was just kind of run and gun in these two scenarios that we were in, but he was doing all sorts of really creative angles and really like approaches that I just haven't been doing in my own work, and I just thought, I'm like, this reminds me of like, and not in a bad way, like there were good creative angles, but it reminded me like what I used to try to do when I was first starting out, like make the scene as unique as possible and the camera angle as unique as possible. Like sell an emotion with that camera angle. And it reminded me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's really what I'm in doing it. I'm not,
got a little too comfortable sitting on the dolly.
Exactly. And like telling people where to put the lights and not kind of forgetting a little bit about that. So
Matt has a big background in broadcast and like
documentary.
Doc style reporting.
Yes.
Yeah. All that, which is very, you got to think on your feet on the spot.
Yeah, a lot of travel stuff. He's been to a whole bunch of countries. So it's like you have to find the best angle in a really quick, short amount of time.
Yeah, and I mean, I always feel I'm my own biggest critic. I just kind of go, oh, I could have done this, I could have done that. But I think that's okay. It's okay. You should grow, constantly grow. And then you run into somebody else who you've never met before, and they have a whole different style, and you're like, whoa, I wish I was doing that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think, but that's exciting to me. I think it's exciting to be humbled in some ways. Some people get depressed about it, but I actually, my initial reaction is like, wow, I suck. Then later on I go, no, that's okay. This is good. I want to do that. I want to be better. And I think to wrap this up into a nice bow, I think that's why I love martial arts. real martial arts like jiu-jitsu, because it's the rabbit hole is so deep that you'll never know everything. But I think that's really cool about it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with our profession. The rabbit hole is so damn deep. You could get lost in just the one little minutia of the skill sets. But that's what makes it fun, and that's what makes me always hungry to do more.
Yeah.
I love things like that. I don't want to just check out. I can't do that. That's not how I'm wired. I want to meet people like you guys. I want to meet more talented people, and it excites me to see what they're doing, and it just motivates me. I get like this hunger to do more.
That's a really interesting fact, because I remember thinking when I was younger, every job that I thought about doing, I was like, there's an end to it. Like, I know I could get to this point, and it's not going to take me that long, you know?
Right.
But with this industry, like, there's an unlimited. No. It's an unlimited.
It always changes too. So.
Yeah,
exactly. So before we wrap up, I'm going to do a little one extra bonus question. How do you deal with the fact that being your own worst critic and trying to inspire yourself and to kind of encourage yourself? How do you deal with that dichotomy of, like, you always probably hate what you do? I know I do. Yeah. But at the same time, looking at it from like a realistic perspective, but at the same time, not really just putting yourself into the ground because of everything you do, you know, because the client ultimately likes it. Your friends will probably like it, you know. So how do you find that balance?
That's an excellent question, because I think deadlines force me to accept that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if there wasn't a deadline, I'd still be tinkering away.
There's a point at which you have to say it's good enough.
Yeah.
Even though it's not what you
And I think that goes back to my original advice to give anybody who's new at this. It's a business. Make business decisions. Don't let it. You got to walk the line, right? You got to walk the line from creativity to it's an occupation, and you can't let it consume you to the point where you don't have a life, where you don't have enjoyment, and you have to be okay with the fact that you have to be okay with making mistakes, and making mistakes means you're trying, and you have to be perfectly okay with that. You have to accept the fact that you're flawed, and you're going to keep learning, and there's no end in sight. There is no end goal. The end game is that we die, right? And so I feel like I'd like the process. Embrace the process. Embrace the process. Don't embrace the end game. Embrace enjoy the process. And I think that's a thing that I look at life in general. Life is a process. It's not you have good days, you have bad days and stuff. Embrace the process. Same thing with martial arts. Embrace the process. Relationships. Embrace the process. Embrace everything as a new day and learning constantly. And I think then you're okay. I'm okay with the fact that I'm going to fail. Be okay with it. Accept it and just move on and do more stuff. And create more stuff, and don't look back.
Embrace the process.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Very well said. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
It's always great to pick your brain and the knowledge. You always downplay yourself because of your age, but your age is something that I yearn for in the sense of the experience
You'll be here
and
soon
the
enough.
Lessons.
Trust me on that.
Yeah, I know I will be.
Because I was in your shoes not too long ago, and I felt like, wow, that happened quick.
Yeah. So no, I look forward. I'd love to have you back on the podcast. I know there's a lot more areas that we can touch on. But in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Jim Mckenzie. Jim, what's your website?
I'm almost embarrassed to put it out there because it's always terrible. But yes,
where do you want people to go
that's
to
fine.
learn about you?
McKenzieCreative.net.
McKenzieCreative.net. Okay. We will have that in the description below on YouTube as well. So go check out the work. I love your reel, by the way. There's some phenomenal shots in that. So, guys, thanks so much for watching. We will be... I don't know what I'm trying to say.
We will be doing more of the things in the future.
We'll be doing more podcasts just like this.
They'll be embracing the
next
process.
one.
Embracing the process.
We have one more podcast before the end of the year, but there are going to be some exciting changes coming to the City Stage and Friends podcast, hopefully.
This is news to me, so I'm excited to see.
All new. No, there will be small changes, branding, but
a new host for one thing.
A new host, exactly. after this bit. But no, thank you guys once again for watching. We will catch you on on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Awesome.